Sandra felt something unusual in the air the moment she arrived on the new film location. It was a quiet place far from the city, surrounded by old trees and soft wind that moved gently through the tall grass. The crew had set up their equipment near a small lodge where everyone would stay for the week. It was supposed to be a smooth schedule, a simple shoot, nothing more. But for some reason, Sandra felt a strange heaviness in her chest, like something unseen was waiting to unfold. She could not explain it, but the feeling stayed with her as she walked toward the lodge with her luggage. Keanu reached the location a few minutes after her. He looked calm, thoughtful, and a little tired, as if something had kept him awake the night before. He greeted Sandra with a warm smile, the kind of smile that made people feel safe without needing many words. She smiled back, but she noticed his eyes carried a quiet weight, almost like he was thinking about something important that he could not share yet. Rain was expected that afternoon, so the crew worked quickly to prepare everything before the storm arrived. Sandra and Keanu spent most of the day rehearsing scenes, supporting the new actors, and making sure the emotions of the script felt real. But even in the middle of the work, Sandra kept noticing small signs that something was different. Keanu seemed more distracted than usual. Sometimes he checked his backpack without any clear reason. Sometimes he looked like he was about to say something, then changed his mind and walked away with a soft sigh. As the sky darkened and the rain finally began to fall, the entire crew rushed inside the lodge. The sound of thunder echoed gently through the mountains, and everyone settled in to wait out the storm. Sandra found herself sitting near the window, listening to the raindrops tapping on the glass like a soft rhythm. She felt strangely unsettled, though nothing had happened yet. She tried to shake away the feeling, but it followed her like a shadow. A few moments later, Keanu walked toward her with a kind smile. He asked if she needed anything from the lodge or if she wanted something warm to drink. She said she was fine and asked him the same, but he simply gave a small nod and said he would be back soon. Before he left, he placed his backpack near the table beside her. She noticed he placed it gently, almost like it held something fragile. For a second, she wondered what he was carrying that made him so careful. The storm grew stronger, and a sudden drop in temperature made the room feel colder. Sandra remembered that Keanu had asked for his charger earlier, but he never came back for it. She looked at the backpack again, unsure if he still needed it. She waited for a moment, telling herself to leave it alone, but curiosity slowly built up inside her. Something about the way he guarded that bag made her wonder if he was hiding something important. She knew it was not her place to check, but the thought of helping him find the charger felt small and harmless. She finally opened the first zip of the backpack. It was neatly arranged inside with books, a jacket, and some small items placed with care. She searched gently, making sure she did not disturb anything. She reached the inner pocket, hoping to find the charger quickly. When she opened it, her breath caught suddenly. Her eyes widened as she froze completely. Inside the pocket was a small velvet box. She stared at it, stunned. Her heart began to beat faster, and for a moment she forgot how to breathe. She did not touch it. She did not even blink. She simply stared at the soft box lying quietly, as if it was waiting for the right moment to reveal a truth that she was never supposed to find. Her chest tightened as dozens of thoughts rushed into her mind. Why was it there? Was it new? Was it meant for someone? The box felt heavy even from a distance. She reached out with trembling fingers and lifted it gently, afraid that even the smallest mistake would break something she did not understand. The velvet felt soft and warm in her hand. She slowly opened the lid. Inside was a simple silver ring. Not flashy, not expensive, not dramatic, just a pure and beautiful ring with a soft shine that felt almost emotional. Sandra's heart skipped. She stood there for several seconds, unable to move, unable to think clearly. The ring carried a meaning that she could not explain yet, but she felt it was important, too important, her mind filled with questions that she could not answer. Was Keanu planning something for someone? Was it connected to a moment he had not shared? Was he keeping this as a memory, or was it something more personal, something deeper, something he wanted to keep private? Her hands shook slightly as she closed the box and placed it back exactly how she found it. She zipped the bag gently, trying to calm the storm inside her chest. She felt guilty, surprised, confused, and strangely emotional. She never expected to find something that carried such weight. She took a deep breath and stepped back from the table, trying to steady her heartbeat. The rain outside grew louder, almost like it matched the noise inside her heart. She sat down again, staring at the window, pretending to watch the storm, but her mind was far away. She kept replaying the moment when she opened the box. She kept wondering what the ring meant. She kept thinking about Keanu's strange behavior during the day. She tried to tell herself not to jump to conclusions, but the questions would not leave her alone. Keanu returned a few minutes later with 2 cups of warm tea. He placed one in front of her with his usual gentle smile. Sandra looked at him carefully. He appeared calm, but she could see something hidden behind his eyes, something he was not ready to share. She wondered if he knew she had checked the bag, but she could not read his expression clearly. He thanked her for waiting and sat across from her. They spoke about the scene they would film tomorrow, but Sandra could not focus on the words. Her mind was completely occupied by the secret she had found. For the rest of the evening, she watched Keanu more closely. Every small gesture, every silent pause, every thoughtful look made her wonder what was truly going on. She felt a quiet tension growing inside her. She wanted to ask him, but she knew she could not. The ring was something personal, and she had already stepped into a place she was not meant to see. As the night grew darker, the storm finally began to calm. Sandra lay in her room later, unable to sleep. She kept thinking about the ring and the gentle way Keanu guarded his backpack. She wondered if he was planning something meaningful, something emotional, or something painful. She felt a strange mix of fear and curiosity. She knew that whatever the truth was, it would change something between them. She was not sure if she was ready for it. But one thing she knew for certain. The calm days ahead were gone. Something deeper had begun. Sandra woke up early the next morning with the same heavy feeling she had the night before. The storm had passed, and sunlight slipped softly through the curtains, but it did nothing to calm the thoughts running through her mind. She lay still for a long moment, trying to steady her breathing as she remembered the small velvet box inside Keanu's backpack. It felt unreal, almost like a dream, yet the image of the silver ring remained painfully clear. It stayed with her like a hidden truth she was not ready to carry. She tried to tell herself that she should forget it, but her heart refused to listen. She stepped out of her room and walked toward the dining area where the crew had gathered for breakfast. The sound of familiar voices filled the lodge, but Sandra felt strangely disconnected from everything. Her eyes kept drifting to the doorway, waiting for Keanu to appear. When he finally walked in, she felt her breath tighten. He looked normal, calm, and peaceful, as if nothing was out of place. He greeted everyone kindly, thanked the crew for their work, and sat down quietly with his tea. Sandra watched him carefully from her seat. He did not seem nervous or secretive the way he did before. Instead, he looked thoughtful, almost warm, which confused her even more. She wondered if he knew she had opened the bag. She wondered if he could somehow sense the questions inside her heart. He caught her gaze briefly and gave a soft smile, the kind of smile that usually made her feel comfortable, but this time it made her even more curious. The crew prepared for the shoot, and Sandra and Keanu rehearsed their lines together. They worked in a field beside the lodge where tall trees cast gentle shadows over the ground. The morning air was crisp, and the soft rustling of leaves created a peaceful atmosphere. But Sandra felt none of that peace. Every time Keanu looked away, she found herself staring at him, searching for signs, searching for answers, searching for something she could understand. She noticed the way he held his backpack close whenever they moved locations, as if he needed to keep it near him at all times. As they rehearsed a quiet, emotional scene, Keanu paused suddenly. He looked at Sandra with a deeper expression, almost like he was trying to read her mind. His eyes softened, and he asked quietly if she was all right. His voice was gentle, but it carried a concern that made her chest tighten. For a moment, she considered telling him the truth, telling him she had seen the ring, but the words refused to come out. Instead, she gave a small smile and said she was just tired from the storm. Keanu nodded slowly, but Sandra could tell he did not fully believe her. Later during lunch break, Sandra sat alone near the edge of the field. She needed a moment to collect herself. The discovery of the ring had created a strange distance inside her, something she could not put into words. She felt nervous, confused, and strangely emotional. She wondered if the ring was for someone else. She wondered if it belonged to a memory. She wondered if it had nothing to do with love at all, but something else entirely. No matter how hard she tried, the questions kept circling inside her mind. Keanu approached her quietly and sat beside her. He did not speak at first. He simply looked at the sky, listening to the wind with a peaceful expression. Sandra waited, feeling the silence stretch between them. She felt her heart pounding, unsure of what he was about to say. After a long moment, Keanu finally spoke. He asked her if she ever thought about moments that shaped her life in unexpected ways. The question surprised her. She turned to look at him, wondering what had made him ask something so deep out of nowhere. He continued by saying that sometimes small actions or small discoveries could change how people see each other. Sandra felt a sudden rush in her chest. She wondered if he was hinting at something. The way he spoke made her feel like he was carrying a hidden truth of his own. She asked him gently if something was bothering him. He looked at her with a soft smile, the kind that held both warmth and pain. He said there were things in life that felt too personal to share too quickly. He said he needed the right moment to speak. The words made Sandra even more uneasy. She wanted to ask him directly about the ring, but the fear of breaking something fragile held her back. She felt like one wrong question could destroy the calm between them. As the day continued, Sandra found herself paying attention to every small detail. Every time Keanu touched his bag, her heartbeat sped up. Every time he walked away for a moment, she wondered if he was practicing something he needed to say. Every time he looked thoughtful, she felt a quiet worry growing inside her. She could not escape the weight of what she had found. Near the end of the day, a small group of crew members sat around talking and laughing. Sandra joined them, trying to distract herself, but her focus kept drifting back to Keanu. He stood a short distance away speaking to a young production assistant. Sandra could not hear his words, but she noticed something in the way he spoke. He looked serious, almost nervous, and he held the strap of his backpack tightly with one hand. She watched closely, feeling a strange tension rise inside her. Suddenly, Keanu's voice dropped lower, and Sandra heard only a small part of what he said. He told the assistant he hoped the plan would go smoothly and that he hoped she would not misunderstand anything. Sandra froze. The words hit her harder than she expected. Her breath caught and her heart sank with confusion. Was he talking about her? Was he worried she might take something in the wrong way? Did he know she had seen the ring? The doubt crept deeper into her thoughts, and the uncertainty wrapped around her like a tightening rope. She walked away slowly, trying to calm her breathing. She felt overwhelmed, unsure, and almost guilty. She kept telling herself that she should not have opened the backpack, that she should not have let curiosity lead her into something private. But the truth was already out, and there was no way to erase it. That night after dinner, Sandra returned to her room early. She sat on the floor near her bed, hugging her knees gently as she tried to make sense of everything. She felt troubled in a way she could not explain. She wanted to trust Keanu the way she always did, but the mystery of the ring and his strange behavior had shaken her. She wondered if she had changed something without meaning to. She wondered if she had stepped into a part of his life that was too personal for her to understand. She looked out the window at the silent darkness outside. The wind moved quietly through the trees, creating a soft echo that filled the night. She knew Keanu was a good person. She knew he was thoughtful, kind, and respectful. She knew he would never hurt anyone intentionally. But she also knew he carried secrets he rarely shared, gentle secrets that lived in the quietest parts of his heart. As she closed her eyes, one thought stayed in her mind. Whatever was happening, whatever the truth behind the ring was, it was going to change everything between them sooner or later. The calm days were fading, and something deeper was waiting just ahead. The next morning began with a soft sunrise that painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, but the beauty of it did nothing to calm Sandra's restless mind. She woke up early again, unable to shake the feeling that something important was unfolding around her, even though Keanu had not said anything directly. She moved slowly through her morning routine, hoping the warm water, quiet room, and calm air would help settle her thoughts. But the confusion from the past 2 days still sat quietly inside her chest like a hidden weight she could not lift. When she stepped out into the hallway, she found Keanu already standing near the lodge entrance. He was speaking to a makeup artist with a gentle smile on his face, but Sandra could see the same quiet tension in his eyes. He noticed her and gave her a warm nod, and she returned the gesture, though it felt harder than usual because her mind was filled with questions. She tried to look normal, calm, and composed, but she felt like he could sense something different in her even if she did not speak a word. The filming schedule for the day was tight, and the crew prepared a long emotional scene that required focus and patience. Sandra and Keanu walked together to the set, but neither of them spoke much. The silence between them felt soft but heavy, like both of them were carrying thoughts they were not ready to share. Sandra kept glancing at him, hoping for some sign or clue that would settle her mind, but he remained gentle, quiet, and carefully composed. During the scene, Sandra noticed something unexpected. Keanu's emotional performance was deeper than usual, almost too real. He delivered each line with a quiet sincerity that felt like it came from somewhere personal. His voice carried a softness mixed with unspoken sadness, and his eyes reflected something heavy he was trying to hide. Sandra felt her heart tighten as she acted beside him, because every moment she looked into his eyes, she saw a truth he was not ready to say. After the shoot, they sat together on a bench under a large tree. The breeze moved through the branches, casting soft, dancing shadows over the ground. Sandra drank water slowly, trying to understand the wave of emotions that scene had stirred inside her. She felt closer to Keanu, but also more distant, as if something between them had shifted without warning. He looked at her for a long second, then asked gently if the scene had felt too heavy for her. She shook her head with a small smile, but inside she was struggling to stay calm. She gathered the courage to ask him if everything was okay. Her voice trembled slightly even though she tried to hide it. Keanu paused, breathing deeply as he looked at the ground for a moment before answering. He said he had been thinking about something important, something that required careful timing and honest feelings. His words were simple, but they held a quiet power that made Sandra's heartbeat speed up. She listened closely, hoping he would continue, hoping he would explain what he meant, hoping he would share something that would help her understand him better. But instead, he simply smiled softly and said he would tell her everything soon. The calm way he said it made her chest ache with both relief and worry. She wanted to trust him completely, but the image of the ring in his bag kept rising inside her mind, creating a tension she could not ignore. She felt trapped between wanting to ask and being afraid of the answer. The confusion was becoming more painful with every passing hour. Later in the afternoon, the crew took a break. Some people rested inside the lodge while others stayed outside to enjoy the warm weather. Sandra walked along a narrow path behind the lodge, hoping the quiet space would help her clear her thoughts. The tall trees created a peaceful shade around her, and the soft wind brushed her face gently. She took slow breaths, trying to convince herself that she could handle whatever truth was coming. But then she heard two crew members talking near the corner of the building. They did not notice her, so she stayed still for a moment, listening by accident. One of them mentioned that Keanu had asked for something unusual from the prop team. The other said he seemed nervous, like he was planning something meaningful for someone. Sandra felt her stomach tighten instantly. She knew they were talking about something connected to him, maybe even the ring. She walked away quietly before they noticed her, feeling overwhelmed all over again. As she returned to the lodge, she found Keanu standing alone near the entrance. He held his backpack over one shoulder and looked like he was waiting for someone. When he saw Sandra, his expression softened, and he waved her over. She walked toward him slowly, trying to keep her face neutral. He told her they needed to rehearse one more scene for the next morning and asked if she had time. She agreed with a gentle nod, though her thoughts were swirling again. They rehearsed together inside a small, empty room where the light from the window fell softly across the floor. The scene was simple, involving quiet conversation and gentle emotional shifts, but Sandra found herself watching Keanu more carefully than she watched the script. His breathing, his expressions, the way he held his hands, the way his voice softened on certain lines, all of it made her feel like he was carrying something fragile inside. At one point, he stopped rehearsing and asked her if she believed that people sometimes hide things not because they want to deceive others, but because they want to protect something precious until the moment feels right. The question caught her completely off guard. She felt her heart jump and she looked at him with wide eyes. She wanted to respond, but she could not form the right words. He noticed her silence and gave a reassuring smile, saying there was no pressure to answer. He simply wanted her to think about it. That night during dinner, Keanu sat beside her again. He spoke politely to everyone and shared small jokes with the crew to keep the atmosphere light, but every time he looked at Sandra, there was a gentleness in his eyes that felt deeper than before. She found herself getting lost in those quiet moments, feeling both anxious and strangely comforted at the same time. She could not understand why the uncertainty was affecting her so strongly, but she knew the mystery of the ring had become a quiet echo in her mind. After dinner, as people began leaving the dining hall, Keanu touched Sandra's arm lightly and asked if she could stay for a moment. She felt her chest tighten again. He looked nervous, almost hesitant, like he was preparing himself for something difficult. She nodded slowly, waiting for him to speak. He looked down at his hands for a moment, then said there was something he wanted to talk about soon, something important, something that mattered to him more than she realized. The words left her breathless. But before he could continue, a crew member called him urgently, interrupting the moment completely. Keanu apologized with an apologetic smile and walked away quickly, leaving Sandra standing alone with her heart racing. She watched him disappear around the corner, feeling both frustrated and confused. It felt like she was standing right on the edge of the truth, yet something kept pulling her back each time she tried to reach it. She returned to her room later that night, feeling more emotional than she expected. She sat on her bed and held her pillow close, trying to steady her thoughts. She knew something big was coming. She could feel it in every quiet interaction, every incomplete sentence, every nervous smile. She knew Keanu was carrying something important, something that involved her in ways she did not fully understand yet. And the ring she had found was no longer just a simple object in a bag. It had become a deeply emotional shadow behind every moment they shared. Something was building, slowly and silently, and she knew the truth would soon break through. The next morning arrived with a soft golden light that spilled across the mountains, but even the warmth of the sun could not quiet the unsettled feeling inside Sandra. She dressed slowly, trying to collect her thoughts before facing the day, but the confusion from the previous night still circled inside her like a gentle storm. She could not forget the moment when Keanu almost shared something important before being interrupted. The memory repeated in her mind again and again, as if her heart kept asking questions she was not ready to answer. She hoped today would give her clarity, but something inside her whispered that the mystery was only growing deeper. When she stepped outside, she found the crew already preparing for an early scene. People were rushing around with equipment, adjusting lights, moving props, and setting up cameras. Sandra scanned the area quietly until she spotted Keanu near the far side of the field. He was speaking to the director in a low voice, and even from a distance she could see the slight tension in his shoulders. He looked thoughtful and restless, as if he was carrying something fragile inside his mind. He glanced toward her for a brief moment, and their eyes met. His expression softened instantly, but he looked away quickly, almost as if he was afraid she might read too much in his gaze. Sandra walked slowly toward the makeup area, trying not to stare at him, but her eyes kept drifting back to him again and again. She felt like she was watching pieces of a puzzle moving around her without knowing how they fit together. Every small gesture, every quiet pause, and every careful look from Keanu reminded her of the silver ring hidden in his backpack. Each moment made her question everything even more. When filming began, the scene required Sandra and Keanu to act through a heavy emotional moment. They stood face to face in a quiet forest clearing, surrounded by tall trees and soft morning light. The script demanded vulnerability, calm intensity, and quiet pain. But the real tension between them made the scene feel even more powerful. Sandra felt her emotions rising naturally, not because of the script, but because of everything unsaid between them. When Keanu delivered his lines, his voice shook slightly, not from weakness, but from sincerity so deep it was almost unsettling. His eyes reflected something she had never seen before, something warm, quiet, and protective. She felt her heart react before she could stop it. After the scene, the director called for a break. Sandra stepped away from the set to catch her breath. She stood beneath a tree and inhaled deeply, trying to calm her racing heartbeat. She felt overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment. It was as if the scene had pulled real emotions out of both of them that neither of them were prepared to face. A few minutes later, Keanu walked over to her. He looked a little nervous, but his voice was gentle as he asked if she was all right. She nodded and tried to smile, but her eyes revealed more than her words. He hesitated for a moment and then said quietly that he never wanted their work to feel heavy in a way that hurt her. His tone was soft, almost protective, and it made Sandra's heart tighten again. She told him truthfully that their scenes never hurt her, they only made her think. He looked down and gave a small, thoughtful smile, but there was something behind it that she could not fully read. She felt closer to him than before, yet she also felt a distance she could not cross. Later in the afternoon, Sandra overheard something that shook her again. She was walking toward the lodge when she heard two crew members talking behind a storage truck. They whispered about Keanu asking for a quiet corner of the lodge that evening. They said he seemed unusually serious, almost like he was planning something personal. Sandra froze where she stood. She knew she should not listen any further, but her heart refused to move. One of them said he had seen Keanu checking something in his bag, something small and important. The other asked if it was related to the special request he made. They both shrugged, confused but curious. Sandra stepped away quickly before they noticed her, but her chest felt tight and her hands trembled slightly. The information left her more confused than before. Her mind jumped to the ring again, replaying the moment she had opened the velvet box. She wondered if tonight was connected to it. She wondered if he was planning something emotional, maybe for someone else. The thought made her heart twist unexpectedly. She did not want to assume anything, but the uncertainty was becoming too heavy to bear. When evening arrived, Sandra went to the dining hall, hoping a warm meal might calm her thoughts. She sat near a window, watching the sky turn from bright gold to deep blue. Keanu arrived a few minutes later, and the moment he saw her, his expression softened. He walked over and sat across from her. They talked lightly about the day, about the scenes, about the weather, but Sandra could feel his words circling around something he was not saying. His eyes held a quiet weight, like he was preparing himself for something difficult. After dinner, Sandra stood up to leave when Keanu gently touched her arm. The gesture was soft, almost afraid of causing discomfort. He looked into her eyes with a mixture of nervousness and sincerity. He told her he needed to speak to her later in the night. His voice carried a seriousness that made her breath catch. She asked quietly if everything was okay, and he nodded, but his eyes revealed something deeper. He told her he would explain everything soon, but he needed a little more time. The words felt heavy, full, and quietly emotional. Sandra walked back to her room with her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her fingertips. She could not focus on anything as she sat on her bed. Her thoughts kept spiraling. What did he want to say? Was it connected to the ring? Was it connected to her? Was it connected to someone else altogether? The uncertainty wrapped tightly around her chest. As the night grew darker, she stepped outside for fresh air, hoping the quiet would help her think. She walked toward the back of the lodge, where a small wooden path led to a darker corner surrounded by tall trees. She stood still, listening to the soft hum of the night. But then she heard something faint. Voices, familiar voices. She walked closer quietly, stopping near the corner of the wall. Keanu was speaking with the director in a low voice. She could not hear everything, but one sentence cut through the silence clearly. Keanu said he hoped Sandra would understand what he was trying to do. He said he did not want her to misread anything. He said the moment needed to be handled with respect because it meant something to him. Sandra felt her breath escape her. She stepped back slowly, careful not to make a sound. Her chest tightened painfully, and her eyes filled with a mix of confusion and fear. She whispered to herself that she should not have listened, but the words were already inside her heart like a growing storm. She returned to her room, closed the door gently, and sat on the floor with her hands over her face. She felt overwhelmed by all the possibilities swirling inside her mind. She did not know what he wanted to say. She did not know if she was part of his plan. She did not know if she was about to hurt or be hurt. The uncertainty pressed against her heart like a quiet ache. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the trembling inside her. She knew the truth was coming soon. She knew the moment he chose to speak would change everything. She knew the ring in the bag was not a small detail. It was connected to something much bigger, something that involved feelings, memories, and quiet truths. As she sat there in the dim room, she felt the weight of the coming moments settle over her like a shadow. Whatever happened next would shape everything between them. And she was no longer sure she was ready for the truth. The night felt heavier than usual, as if the air itself carried a quiet tension that Sandra could not escape. She sat on the edge of her bed with her hands resting on her knees, staring at the wooden floor as her thoughts tangled in countless directions. She kept replaying the previous moments in her mind, especially the words she had accidentally heard. Keanu hoped she would understand what he was trying to do. He hoped she would not misread anything. He had spoken with a seriousness that pierced straight into her heart. She felt a mix of fear, curiosity, and a strange sadness she could not fully explain. She wanted clarity, but the weight of not knowing kept tightening around her chest. After some time, Sandra stood up and walked toward the window. The sky outside was covered in deep shades of blue and black, with small stars scattered like distant whispers. The quietness of the night should have brought her peace, but instead it made her thoughts louder. She wondered if she should speak to Keanu first, or if she should wait for him to come to her. She wondered if he had already planned the moment in his mind. She wondered if the ring was part of a memory or a future. Every possibility felt overwhelming, and she found herself breathing slowly to stay calm. A soft knock on her door broke the silence. She turned quickly, her breath catching. She knew it was him. No one else would come to her room this late. She hesitated for a moment, gathering her courage before she walked to the door and opened it gently. Keanu stood outside with a quiet and uncertain look in his eyes. He gave her a small smile, the kind that felt warm but also carried a hint of nervousness. He asked softly if she could join him for a moment outside. His voice was calm, but Sandra could sense the tension beneath every word. She nodded slowly and stepped out. They walked side by side through the dim hallway until they reached the small wooden path behind the lodge. The faint sound of the wind moved between the trees, and the soft moonlight created silver patterns on the ground. The place felt peaceful, but Sandra could feel her heartbeat pounding inside her chest. She did not know what he was about to say, but she felt the weight of the moment more intensely than anything she had felt in a long time. Keanu stopped walking when they reached the edge of the clearing. He turned toward her, and for a long moment neither of them spoke. The silence stretched gently between them, filled with things neither of them knew how to express yet. He looked like he was searching for the right words, and Sandra waited patiently, even though her heart trembled inside her. Finally, Keanu took a slow breath and said there was something he needed to explain. He said he should have spoken earlier, but he wanted the moment to feel right and respectful. Sandra stayed quiet, watching him closely, trying to hold herself steady. His hands were slightly shaking, and he kept looking down as if the ground might help him gather courage. When he finally looked up into her eyes, she felt a wave of emotion wash through her. He told her that he had been working on something personal, something that connected to someone's past in a quiet but meaningful way. He said he wanted to be careful because he never wanted to cause confusion or misunderstanding between them. His voice was gentle but filled with sincerity. Sandra listened closely, her chest tightening with every word. She felt like she was standing on the edge of a truth that would either ease her heart or break it. She wanted to ask about the ring directly, but fear wrapped around her thoughts. She worried that asking too soon might interrupt something delicate. Instead, she whispered that she trusted him and that he could tell her whatever he needed to share. He smiled softly at her words, but the nervousness in his eyes did not fade. Keanu moved his hand slowly to his backpack. When Sandra saw him reach for it, her breath caught. Her entire world slowed down. She felt her throat tighten and her hands grew cold. Every moment she had spent wondering, every late-night thought, every quiet heartbeat rushed back into her mind all at once. She remembered the velvet box. She remembered the silver ring. She remembered the fear of misunderstanding him. She remembered how close she had felt to losing control of her thoughts. Keanu paused before opening the bag. He looked at her again as if making sure she was ready for whatever came next. She nodded gently, even though she was not sure she truly was. Then he slowly unzipped the bag and reached inside. Sandra held her breath, unable to look away. Her pulse raced so fast it felt like it echoed through her whole body. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of pulling out the velvet box, he took out a small folded letter and a simple wooden box. Sandra blinked in confusion. She had expected the ring immediately, but he held something else entirely. The wooden box was old, worn around the edges, and clearly special. He opened it carefully to reveal a collection of small objects inside: a faded photograph, a silver hairpin, a tiny bracelet. Items that looked deeply personal and filled with emotional history. Sandra stared at the objects without speaking. Keanu's voice softened as he explained that the wooden box belonged to someone he had known many years ago, someone who had lost all these items during a difficult time. He said he had found the box again during a charity event and wanted to return it, but he had not found the courage to do so until now. He said he had come across the person recently, an elderly security guard at the lodge, who had no idea the items had ever been found. Sandra listened quietly, absorbing every word. Her confusion shifted into empathy as she realized the depth of what he was sharing. He said he had planned to return the box tonight when things felt calm and respectful. He said he wanted to do it privately because acts of kindness meant more when they were not performed for attention or praise. Sandra felt something warm bloom inside her heart as she listened. This was the side of Keanu she admired the most: gentle, thoughtful, quietly brave. But still, the question about the ring remained in her mind. She wondered if it was connected somehow. Before she could ask, Keanu reached into the bag again. This time, her breath stopped completely. He pulled out the small velvet box she had seen. He held it carefully in his hands, almost like it was something fragile. He looked at her with eyes full of seriousness and emotion. He said the ring belonged to the same elderly guard. It was a replica of the wedding ring he had lost long ago in an earthquake. Keanu said he had noticed the man looking at his empty finger every day with a quiet sadness. So he had the ring made in secret, hoping to return a piece of the man's past that had meant everything to him. Sandra felt tears fill her eyes, not from sadness, not from confusion, but from overwhelming respect. Every fear she had, every uncertainty that had weighed on her heart melted away instantly. She realized that the silence, the tension, the nervousness had never been about her. It had always been about kindness, about healing, about something bigger than either of them. Keanu closed the velvet box gently and looked at her with a tenderness she had never seen before. He thanked her quietly for listening. Sandra felt her heart soften in a way she could not describe. She understood everything now. The ring was not a secret meant to confuse her. It was a gesture of pure goodness. She reached for his hand and he held her softly. The moment between them felt warm, gentle, and filled with unspoken emotion. She felt calmer than she had in days. But she also knew the story was not over yet, because Keanu had not returned the box or the ring. and the moment he planned to give them back was still waiting to unfold. The night felt calm after their conversation, but Sandra sensed that something important was still waiting to happen. She walked back toward the lodge beside Keanu, feeling a gentle silence between them that no longer felt heavy or confusing. It felt peaceful now, almost warm, as if the truth had finally allowed her heart to breathe again. The weight inside her chest had softened, replaced by quiet admiration for the kind of person Keanu had always been behind the scenes. He carried the ring and the wooden box with such care that it seemed like he was guarding pieces of someone else's soul. Sandra felt grateful that she had been trusted enough to see this side of him. They reached the back entrance of the lodge where a small light glowed softly above the door. Everything was quiet except for the soft rustle of leaves in the distance. The elderly security guard stood near his usual spot, leaning gently on his cane, watching the lodge with calm eyes. He looked tired but peaceful, unaware that a moment that would change his night forever was about to happen. Sandra felt her breath steady as she realized this was the moment Keanu had been preparing for. Keanu stepped forward gently and called the guard by his name. The man turned slowly, surprised to see Keanu approaching him at this hour. He smiled politely and asked if everything was all right. Keanu nodded softly and said he wanted to give him something the crew had found. Sandra stood a few steps back, observing every second with a heart full of emotion. She could see Keanu's hands shaking slightly as he held the wooden box. It was a quiet sign of how much this meant to him. Keanu opened the box carefully and showed it to the guard. For a moment, the guard simply stared at it without speaking. His eyes widened slowly as he recognized the objects. His hands trembled as he touched the faded photograph. Sandra watched the emotion rise in his face. The guard whispered that he thought he had lost the box forever. His voice cracked when he said he had not seen the items in many years. He held the photograph gently, almost afraid it would disappear again. Tears gathered in the corners of his eyes as memories flooded back to him. Keanu explained softly that he had found the box during a charity event and had always wanted to return it to the rightful owner. He said he never forgot the stories the guard had shared about his wife, his family, and the difficult years they had survived. He said he believed these items deserved to be back with the person who had treasured them. The guard wiped his eyes with trembling hands and thanked Keanu repeatedly. It was not loud or dramatic. It was quiet, deep, and full of gratitude that reached straight into Sandra's heart. Then Keanu took a small breath and reached into his bag again. He pulled out the velvet ring box and held it with both hands. The guard looked confused, unsure of what it was. Keanu opened it gently, revealing the silver ring inside. Sandra held her breath as she saw the guard's face soften with shock. Keanu told him that he had noticed the old man touching his empty finger whenever he spoke about his wife. He said he wanted to create something that would remind him of the love he once had, something beautiful and respectful, something that honored the memory he carried so close to his heart. The guard's legs weakened slightly as he stared at the ring. He covered his mouth with one trembling hand as tears streamed down his cheeks. Sandra felt her eyes fill with emotion. She had never seen a moment so pure, so sincere, so quietly powerful. The guard whispered that he had lost his original wedding ring in an earthquake many years ago. He said it was the last connection he had to his wife, who had passed away long before. He thought he had lost that memory forever. Keanu placed the ring gently into the man's hand and told him that memories never truly disappear. Sometimes they find their way back in unexpected ways. The guard broke down in tears, holding the ring like it was the most precious thing he had ever touched. Sandra felt her heart tighten with warmth as she watched the moment unfold. The gratitude in the man's voice and the tenderness in Keanu's eyes created a silence that felt almost sacred. The guard hugged Keanu with a trembling embrace, and Keanu held him with calm respect. Sandra felt her own throat tighten as she wiped her tears quietly. When the moment finally settled, the guard thanked Keanu again and again, unable to express how much the gesture meant to him. He said he felt like a missing piece of his life had been gently returned after many painful years. Keanu smiled softly and told him that kindness is always worth sharing, no matter how simple or quiet it may seem. The guard touched his heart with one hand and walked away slowly, holding the ring close to his chest. Sandra stood still for a long moment, letting the emotional silence settle around her. She felt overwhelmed in the most beautiful way. She had spent days thinking the ring might be part of a complicated story. She had let confusion sweep her into fear. She had imagined possibilities that never existed, but the truth was far more touching than anything she could have expected. Keanu had not been hiding a secret for himself. He had been carrying a gift of healing for someone who never expected kindness. She walked toward him slowly. He turned toward her with gentle eyes. The moonlight touched his face, revealing the soft emotion still present in his expression. She told him quietly that she finally understood everything. He looked down with a shy smile, as if embarrassed by his own goodness. She thanked him for showing her the depth of kindness that could exist in one simple act. He shook his head gently and said he did not do it for praise. He said he simply believed that everyone deserves a moment where life feels gentle again. They stood together in the quiet night, sharing a soft silence that needed no explanation. Sandra felt closer to him than ever before. She felt proud of him. She felt grateful for the warmth he brought into the world without expecting anything in return. She felt something inside her shift in a gentle way that she could not ignore. Keanu glanced at her, and in his eyes she saw something calm and familiar, a softness that felt like trust. A quiet bond that had grown slowly between them through every moment of confusion, every moment of silence, every moment of truth. They walked back to the lodge together. Sandra felt peaceful for the first time in days. She looked at Keanu and said softly that her heart had skipped the first time she saw the ring, but for reasons far different from now. He laughed quietly, and the sound felt warm in the cool night air. He said sometimes things look confusing until the light touches them from the right angle. She smiled at his words, feeling the truth of them settle inside her. As they reached the steps of the lodge, she paused and looked at him with gratitude shining in her eyes. She told him she was glad she had seen the ring, even if she misunderstood it at first, because it allowed her to understand the deeper kindness he always carried. Keanu looked at her with gentle warmth and said he was grateful she understood. They stepped inside, leaving the night air behind them but carrying the softness of the moment with them. The confusion was gone. The fear was gone. What remained was something quiet and beautiful, respect, trust, and a bond strengthened by the kind of kindness that changes people. The story did not end with a misunderstanding or a dramatic twist. It ended with a reminder that the quietest acts of kindness are often the ones that touch the heart the deepest.